Good morning. Do not let me spoil your day. But I have this morning, live and in the studio, the self-appointed beast of British Columbia. The man who has started his own anarchist party in what I suspect, trifle paranoid, is self-defense against the Kill Collins movement. The man, of course, is Doug Collins. And there are influential groups in this province who regard him as a dangerous man, a man who whips up bigotry, touch of racism, and right-wing sentiment, and is not in touch with the popular, tolerant views of those who run things in this country. On the other hand, there are those who feel very strongly that Collins is the only man in the media with guts enough to speak up for the silent majority on certain issues. Collins at work is something else again. He's no new boy to British Columbia. He came out here in 1951 and he was just as loud and ugly then as he is today. He caused all kinds of trouble as a reporter, good Labour reporter on the Vancouver Sun. He made a mistake at one time and went to the CBC. Couldn't really help that. Now he appears in the Sun, too many days a week, many people think, on issues which are blunt, in favour, some say, of racist policies. Collins is, in his own particular way, unique. He makes me look like a watered-down milksop. In fact, I am really a much more balanced and informed reporter in many issues than Collins is. Collins is here this morning, and you'll meet him, and I've also got a former member of the BC Human Rights Commission, Collins would call it the Wrongs Commission, in a couple of minutes.
He's directing the show, eh?
He tries. Well, he tries to. Right, get yourself comfortable.
Okay.
Henry, come to me.
Straight to him. Straight to him first, okay?
Back to me, and then I'll introduce Collins and Bill Black, and then come back to Collins.
Did you get that? Did you get that? Open his mic again.
You're back to me. We'd run the film thing. Then I'll introduce Collins, Bill Black, and back to Collins.
Okay, yeah. Yes,
and I'll
okay.
concentrate on Collins in the first segment of the interview.
Yes, and we'll concentrate on Collins for the first segment. Okay, would you like to say something, Mr. Collins? Voice from Doug?
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, etc.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I'm not smoking on this. Paranoid.
You know that?
Okay. The name Doug Collins brings out more heat than light on many occasions. I'll give you my own opinion of Collins later on. But we tried a little experiment yesterday in downtown Vancouver. Quite simply, we put up a camera and we asked people to tell us on camera what they thought of the beast of British Columbia, Collins.
What do you think of Doug Collins?
Well, I know a few places where you could put him, but nothing that I would talk about right now.
Turns me off because he's so belligerent. Controversial.
Absolutely lousy. They should deport him back to where I come from.
I like him. He's a different attitude, a different opinion, which I enjoy reading.
Cynical. He doesn't seem to believe in anything.
Well, he's chauvinistic, but I guess he can't help it. It's kind of typical of his age, isn't it, and his mentality.
I find it very irritating. I suppose he's free to write what he wants, but I just don't enjoy reading it.
I really like Doug Collins. He's, opinionated about a lot of things, and seems like he's a reactor a lot of times, but he gets things moving.
I don't like the material he writes. I don't like the way he writes it. I think he's a very ignorant individual.
I just don't like racism being expressed in print or any other means, and he's a bloody racist.
What do you think of that, Collins?
Oh, pretty good. Not bad. Par for the course.
Well, you're a reporter.
You fixed it all up, of course.
I did
you
not fix it up.
You did. You hate me. You hated me ever since I beat you in debate in 1956.
You are really, you're more in showbiz than I am nowadays. Now let's get down to this quite seriously. We want to tackle this seriously. I don't mind if I spoil people's day, but I want to be serious about it. Because you've been under solid attack from many quarters. And I'm not going to quote Dr. Spectrum yet. I'm just going to tell you that I would have had Kathleen Ruff here today, except that she is down at the Human Rights Conference in Tennessee.
Oh, yes, but she wouldn't appear with me anyway. She has refused.
Would you tell me why she should appear with you? You tell me right now some of the descriptions you've given to this dedicated civil servant.
You mean the Minister for Morality?
Who has been set up by legislation in British Columbia, the Human Rights Commission, and what's the way you treat her worse than you would treat a dog?
Well, no, well, that's true, because I treat my dog much better than I treat her. But no, I think she's an absolute pain in the neck and typical of the new establishment in this country and in British Columbia. She is out of touch with people. I think she persecutes people. She runs after them. What the hell is it to do with her? How the newspaper advertisers advertise. She would like everyone stereotyped in different ways. She says no stereotyping, okay? But she'd like, you know, so many of this race, so many of that race, and all the rest of it in the public advertising. Absolutely nothing to do with her. Nothing in the Human Rights Act of British Columbia to suggest that it should be. And she pokes her nose in where it is not wanted.
She's set up by legislation to prevent discrimination, to give women equal opportunities. I'm not talking about Sheila Day yet, and she has done some very good things. She's made women conscious of the opportunities they can have, made them conscious of equal pay, has stepped in on some quite good discrimination cases. You call her Miss Honey Thunder. You call her the female Torquemada. You demand in your column, your very powerful column, that she be fired.
Right.
She can't really answer you when you use the whole clout of the Vancouver Sun.
She answers me all the time. She's running around as a civil servant, Marky. We pay this person's wages, and she runs around all the time. In fact, you know, denouncing me and commenting on public affairs. You know, since when have public servants had the right to do that? I don't mind. I've got a forum in which to defend myself. You know, when she denounced me as a racist, Sun carried it on the second front page. Good. But don't say she's defenseless. That little honey thunder is quite capable of looking after herself.
Let me see if I can make a case that you do appear like a racist. For instance, when you exposed an unemployment insurance racket, you specifically aimed it at East Indians in the Fraser Valley.
Because it was East Indians.
But you know perfectly well that there are all kinds of East Indians not involved. And the underlying our fairly tolerant society just now is this business of colour prejudice.
Webster,
and that when you say...
You're old enough to know
just
better.
Just a moment, please. And when you say East Indians and an immigration racket, all kinds of true bigots will say, see, all these East Indians are the same.
I'll tell you something.
Tell me
you
something.
should know at your age what it's all about. And in fact, you do know what it's all about. You're just asking questions for the sake of asking them.
I'll speak my piece.
Okay.
You answer the question.
Right. Now, the question is, the answer is this. There were about 42 East Indian farmers involved in that thing. To be a member of the and an unspecified number of East Indian employees. No, to be a member of that particular club, you had to be an East Indian. You had to speak the language. You had to have an in. It was no use Jack Webster, as a poor boy from Scotland, going out there and wanting to pick berries and so on and cheat the unemployment insurance. You had to be a member of that specific club. Therefore, I identified it, and I would do so again. And furthermore, let me tell you, I would identify 42 Scots farmers who fix things up that way.
I wonder if you would.
Yes, I would. Especially if you were in it.
Yeah, but I really wonder if you would. Now, on another particular issue that I want to tackle you on, and that's a very astute interpretation made of you. I will not identify the author.
Oh, no, the
this
author.
really put you into orbit, because I think maybe the truth struck home. It said here, a phony psychiatrist, Dr. Spectrum, observed that immigrants to this country, particularly immigrants of lower class birth,
like you.
Would you be serious,
Is he talking
please?
about you? That's fathering him, little Lord Whimsy. I know who you're after.
Just a moment, please. Tend to be very disparaging towards those of other races who attempt to follow them. And that the certain British working class immigrants, especially if granted the influence of the media, are desperate to boycott others of unfamiliar skin. Now, I know that all the people who read this friend of yours, Peter Whimsy...
Nobody reads him.
They think that's true about you. You were a good left-wing socialist when I first knew you in,
So were you.
in 1951.
So were you, and now look what's happening.
We're not interviewing me, we're talking to you. And what are you now? You're a guy who supports the whites in Rhodesia. You support the South African apartheid
Not
government in
necessarily.
some ways.
No. In
You
some
do.
way, I give them a fair deal, because they don't get any deal. As I explained recently in a column, I was lunching with a representative of the South African government, and he said, we stand no chance with the Western media. And that is true. That's totally prejudiced. As for little Lord Whimsy, maybe he'll get together his act someday and start doing some reporting again. He hasn't been doing any for a long time.
It's not fair for you to attack Fotheringham, your own columnist, on the
He
same
attacked
page
me
as you.
first. Who struck the first blow?
But is it not a fact that you were, in your early days, in those days, you would never have dreamed of supporting a government which was guilty of racial discrimination against a minority or a majority of blacks, would you? What has
I'm not
changed
supporting.
you? What
Who
has
said
changed you?
I am, just a minute, I am not supporting a government that is guilty of discrimination. I am giving them, as far as I deal with the subject at all, a fair deal because, as I've said before, they don't get one, and I think that there's nothing more smug. Listen here, Webster, let me give you this. There's nothing more smug than the population of this country, as represented by its government, that dares to condemn South Africa because we, if we were in their position, would do exactly probably the same thing.
As maybe we've done with the Indians
That's
over
right.
a number of years.
What, as the South
Except
African...
that nowadays, you're not even sympathetic to Indians.
Yeah, just a minute. What do you mean I'm not sympathetic? Of course I'm sympathetic to Indians. Look, as the South African guy said to me, what would 4.5 million white Canadians do put into the position of the white South African? You tell me. I know the answer.
They do precisely the same thing.
Right. Well, that's my point.
In all point. Except that you'd use it with such a cleaver. You're certainly not a sophisticated person, are you?
Well, I don't know.
I'm talking about in your public presentation of things.
I believe, Webster, as you do, I was going to call your name there, but I won't.
Leave
I
me
really
out
like
of it.
it.
Leave me out
But I believe in coming to the point and not messing around. I don't say when I'm criticizing Israel, which I've done, because Israel is a military power which is feared by the Arabs. I'm not suggesting they're always wrong. They're right part of the time, but nevertheless, I've been critical of them. I don't start out a column along on that subject by saying some of my best friends are Jews, but, that's nonsense. I come to the point and say they're wrong.
Let's be positive about you for a moment. Did you win you were a moonlight? You left the Vancouver Sun because of allegations you were moonlighting.
That's right.
Remember that?
What allegations? They were
You were moonlighting.
charges. Yes, I was moonlighting.
And Swangard dumped you, or you quit.
That's right. Well, they told me that I didn't have the right to work for radio and television in my spare time, and I told them that I didn't tell them what to do in their spare time, therefore that was it.
And yet, probably the best reporting you've done on the Vancouver Sun was your expose of moonlighting by UBC professors.
Fair enough, but there is a very big but here.
What's the but?
The but is this, that I wasn't being paid by the state, and furthermore, I was always at work for 7 or 8 hours a day as required. I wasn't bogging off like so many professors do, pretending to work on Salt Spring Island and other places.
Collins, Bill Black, and Webster in a couple of minutes. An interested observer here this morning with full freedom to say what he likes about Collins. The interested observer is Bill Black, who is a law professor at UBC and a former member of the BC Human Rights Commission. Now, Bill, you've met Collins before, haven't you?
No, this is the first time.
First time you met him. Quite an experience, isn't it?
Interesting.
What do you make of the man? I mean, just let your hair down and tell me what you think of him. Is he a true bigot and a true racist?
I don't like to get involved in those labels, but I think someone who says, I give the racist views a full airing, I don't know if it makes any difference whether he believes what he says or whether he doesn't believe what he says.
You mean he might just be a monkey for their cause?
Well, it comes out the same way as far as the effect, and I think the effect's very harmful.
When you were on the Human Rights Commission, were they concerned about the Collinses of the world?
Yeah, I think very worried. Partly, people like the Human Rights Commission don't have the media exposure. We don't have 3 times a week.
Well, Kathleen Ruff certainly has, hasn't she? She's
Not
been on every radio and television show that I can think of throughout the province, and she's a very charming person who puts across a message, doesn't she?
Honey thunder.
I mean, I think she's done a good job in a lot of situations, but I think it's very worrisome when the press keeps pounding back at discriminatory attitudes. And I mean, I don't know whether you believe them or whether you just want to give them an airing or what you're doing there, but it comes out the same.
To talk?
I'm not going to stop you to talk. The man's asked you a simple question. Do you believe what appear to be your discriminatory attitudes, or do you just use them for provocation?
Nice little fellow, isn't he? Anyway, typical professor. An academic approach
No need
to
for
things.
personal insults.
Yes,
It's not
yes.
Fotheringham who's sitting there.
Anyway, thank you. I believe every word I write. I couldn't write something in which I didn't believe. But, I think that you're making something of a false assumption when you say that I have discriminatory attitudes. I don't. On the contrary, when, for example, I am against what they call affirmative action or preferential hiring at City Hall, I am for non-discriminatory attitudes. That's exactly the point. I don't think that there's any future in saying we're going to have 10% Chinese and 5% East Indians and 3% West Indians and so on at City Hall, on City Hall staff.
That has been denied 1,000 times.
It can be denied 1,000 times, but I have the evidence. And what they are after is the percentages, and don't let them kid you that they're not. They're a bunch of liars.
He's now talking about Sheila Day, the Commissioner for Unequal Opportunity.
And now, but
as he calls her.
Well, I haven't seen that evidence in the papers.
Well, I can tell you, well, the evidence has been in my column, but for one thing, they speak of nothing but the percentages, of racial percentages at City Hall. They go to bed dreaming percentages, and in the report that was drawn up by Sheila Day before she appointed herself to this job with the aid of other lefties like Harry Rankin and so on.
And Darlene Mazzari, don't forget her.
Mike Harcourt. The whole bloody
majority
bunch.
of council.
Eh?
Majority of council.
Well,
The fact is that the report that she drew up, that thick, was full of percentages. That's what they're after, and that's what they're talking about.
I'm going to shock you, and I might even shock you too. Is it not essential, Bill Black, as a former member of the Human Rights Commission, if you are going to take what has been an oppressed minority, and I don't believe that women are an oppressed minority, but I believe that...
They're not a minority.
Well, certainly not oppressed nowadays. Is it not necessary, actually, to have affirmative action, to put certain categories of, certain types of people into certain jobs, so that it can be demonstrated that they can do the jobs?
Okay, I'd like to start out by saying I think I agree with you, and I think Sheila Day does, that there shouldn't be quotas. And okay, but I think what you do need to do is you have to find out where there's a problem in order to correct the problem. You don't want to be aiming a program at a group that's already represented well in the
You mean the white man?
Yeah, and they've got outreach and stuff like that. I know what outreach means. It's do-good jargon, you know, for making sure that this ethnic group knows what's going on and she'll apply and come in and apply for a job. You know, I mean, what we're seeing in this country, Jack, and what, of course, they've had in the States now for some years, since 1960s anyway, in this affirmative action thing, is a total mess. It is official and bureaucratically directed discrimination, and make no mistake about it, that was what the BACA thing was all about, and that is what I don't want to see here. Whether you do or not is up to you.
Just a minute, we've got to explain BACA. BACA was the white
chap who couldn't get into medical school.
The white chap who couldn't get into medical school, and he went to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they said he'd been discriminated against by an affirmative action percentage program.
Okay, but I think one of the problems here is what we're talking about is the Vancouver program. Some excess that went on in Albuquerque doesn't seem to me at all relevant to that.
I don't think you can divide, with all respect, Bill, I don't think that you can make a division between these two things, because we get it from there. That's our inspiration. The left in Canada is avidly seeking to copy the left in the United States. That is what it's all about.
I mean, I think if that's what Sheila Day was trying to do, you'd have a valid complaint. I think what we have to do is learn by the mistakes down there.
Just a minute.
I can bring
just a moment, please. Well, I was going to talk about the Koenig case, where Koenig more or less laid his job on the line.
Right. And he was a brave man to do so, and I supported him. Because, you know, should Sheila Day do the recruiting for the fire department? Or some damned councillor?
Sure, but of course the very point is, as a true chauvinist, which you are, and you are so too, you don't want to see women on the fire department.
Don't be silly. I don't care. Listen to me, and I'll put this straight for you. I don't care if there's a woman mayor. I don't care if there's a woman city manager. Look, I worked for years in radio for one of the best producers in the country, with a woman who was running Capital Report in Ottawa, and there was never any thought in my head that I shouldn't work for that woman. She was a damn good person. I say merit is the thing, not sex or race.
Exactly.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with that exactly. And it seems to me what we don't have now is a merit principle when we have a situation where you can show that certain groups that are well represented in society that have good qualifications aren't getting the jobs.
Okay, let's go back to the fire department. You and I both know that in the fire department, to get on that list, it was nice if you had a drag or a relative or something on the department. And you had to be a white male of a certain height, weight, and build. And there must have been some built-in discrimination on the fire department hiring lists.
There may have been. In fact, let's say that there was, okay? But you are not going to change those situations by setting up more police forces. I mean, go down to Quebec. What have they got? You know, people here have no idea. We talk about discrimination. Do you realize what's going on in Quebec?
Yes.
I mean, they've got a language police. They've got one official language. English is a non-language, even though 1 million people in Quebec speak only English. They discriminate like crazy. Do you know that of 30,000 civil servants in Quebec, there are only 300 English speakers left? You talk about discrimination, let these do-gooders go down there and do a few things for us there.
Very valid point he has there. If you want to look at Canada as a country where we should fight each other on discrimination basis.
No,
He's right about that, you know, in Quebec.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to the fire thing just before we pass over that. It seems to me when you look at what they really wanted to do, what they wanted to have is public advertising for public jobs. Instead of word of mouth so friends of the people already in there could get in.
No,
there are no tests now as far as physical qualifications to get in except height and weight. What they wanted to put in was a real test to see strength, to make sure that the merit principle really applied. Those were the kinds of things they were asking.
I want to make a statement. Put me down as against women in the fire department, mixed sleeping accommodation, all kinds of problems. God knows there are enough problems with the men and women in the police departments now.
If they can do the job, I don't care. If they can do it. If I've told Sheila Day, if she can carry me up a 200-foot ladder without dropping me down, that'll be fine. But I don't want a big blanket underneath in case she just drops me on purpose.
Webster, Collins, and Bill Black. Bill, where were you born?
Seattle.
Where were you born?
Folkestone.
Where was I born? Glasgow.
Timbuktu.
Glasgow.
Glasgow.
There is not one born Canadian in front of a camera on this program.
Well, it's obviously being discriminated against, and if I were a Canadian...
If you were
I
Sheila
am, as a
Day,
matter of fact, yeah.
you would
We all
insist
are,
that there'd be one born Canadian on every television show in front of the camera.
Right, yeah.
Regardless of colour, race, or creed.
Absolutely.
You were accused by one of your own colleagues, a fellow by the name of what, Barringer?
Oh, Little Bill Barringer. Yes, yes. Little Bill.
Well, you be snide on all occasions.
Yes.
Little Bill Barringer, of really...
Little Bill, dear little fellow.
Really not giving an accurate report of that somewhat hysterical group called the Friends of Kathleen Ruff Society. Now, is there a group called the Friends of Kathleen Ruff Society?
Let me make sure, for the edification of your viewers, if you have any, that...
Three.
Okay.
Your wife, my wife, and Bill's.
Let me emphasize that there is no registered society under the Societies Act which calls itself the Friends of Kathleen Ruff Society. The Friends of Kathleen Ruff Society is an invention of mine to describe all the Bill Blacks and Bill Barringers and Peter McNellys and people like that who combine forces in an attempt to down the beast of British Columbia, my humble self.
All right, what was their plan?
Their plan
They
was...
did meet.
They did meet, and their
By
plan...
the way, he said Pendica wouldn't come on the program with you this morning. I asked him.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, I don't blame him for not coming on because I'd have murdered him.
You'd outshout him if nothing else.
No, the thing is, what was I going to say? About what their plan was. Stop interrupting me, Webster. I don't have time to think.
Keep your mind together. People say that you never do think, but in the meantime, keep your mind together.
Thank you very much for those
You're telling me about the objects of the Friends of Kathleen Ruff Society.
A founding member of the Friends of Kathleen Ruff Society is being
Oh,
interviewed.
is that so?
Anyway, the thing is that their little plan was to organize 20,000 subscription cancellations of the Vancouver Sun. So that, Stu Keat would think twice or maybe even three times.
Stu Keat, who is he?
He's the publisher, and I want to say, and I can be accused of... bootlicking. But I want to say, the publisher in Canada with the most guts. There is no one else in Canada who would tolerate me. Okay? Because the Toronto Star just Reader's Digest every day. The Globe and Mail is another do-good magazine. The Toronto Sun the Toronto Sun.
Do you regard yourself as a West Coast Blue Bar Zinc?
No, I don't, but that's beside the point. We're talking about these 20,000 subscription cancellations. Right. That's what they wanted to do in order to frighten the publisher of the Sun into getting rid of me. Now, maybe they have the power and maybe they don't, but no one on the Sun has ever told me to write anything, and nobody on the Sun has ever told me not to write anything. I want to put that on the record. They had no idea when they put me on as a columnist what I would be writing about. No one ever discussed it.
Well, if I were publisher of the Vancouver Sun, I doubt very much if I would let you and Fotheringham whale away at each other. I think that's bad for the paper, but that's my own personal opinion.
Well, I never strike the first blow, Jack. I am a very gentle man.
Have you cancelled your subscription, Bill Black, to the Vancouver Sun?
I don't have a subscription, so I haven't been able to cancel it, no.
So he doesn't even know what I'm talking about.
Yes, you do.
I buy papers on the newsstand.
But do people, are you involved in this group which is trying to cut Collins' throat?
No, I haven't been involved in that group, except for his inclusion of me and you too, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. Okay, Doug Collins, what will we talk about next? I'm just trying to think the best way to get at you. Well, why did you leave the CBC in Ottawa? Were you too loud for them?
Well, really, I found myself not so much in Ottawa, but out here. I didn't mind Ottawa. I was down there for 3 years, as you know, and I was a member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery and all the rest of it, and I did national programs and local programs out of there, and I was pretty busy. However, my family, and myself for that matter, had never really gotten away from the West Coast. You know, once a West Coaster, always a West Coast. There's no other place like it, and if I had to be anywhere else, then maybe Ottawa would be the place. But I was given an opportunity to come back here to work for Weekend, the national flagship as it was then on television, and I did so, and that wasn't bad for a couple of years. And then Weekend went and I worked for another program, Up Canada. Can you imagine a name like that?
Dreadful program.
Get on the program. Girls would answer the phone, Up Canada, you know. And so I was underemployed. I mean, I was going mad, doing nothing. And in any case, that folded. I could have gone back to Ottawa, but I didn't, and I stayed out here. And shall I tell you something? I really bear my friend Little Lord Whimsy, alias Fotheringham, no ill will at all. And if he had not struck me, I would not have struck him. He was responsible for my coming onto the Sun.
He got you the job. He recognized your worth.
He didn't hire me.
No,
but he was responsible for getting me on.
Do you speak to each other socially?
Well, I'm always amiable. You know that. And when we meet, we say good morning and all the rest.
You're
of it.
not intimate.
But the fact is that I have tried to be really friendly to Alan, and he passes me with a stiff good morning as if he were wearing a Dickens top hat. You know.
Tell me, how many subscriptions to the Sun have been cancelled by this Kill Collins movement?
I have not the faintest idea. I don't concern myself with those things.
Nobody has given you any figures at all?
No, I mean, I see letters to the editor. There must have been about 20 letters to the editor in which people have said they've cancelled their subscriptions. But
who would you say, apart from the Kathleen Russell Society, are your principal enemies? Or shall I name them for you?
Name them, yes.
People in the BC Teachers Federation.
Not really, because when I was bashing the BC Teachers Federation, they were led by a very left-wing group, and the right-wing group, that is not right-wing, there aren't any right-wingers in Canada, including me.
Except you.
Not really. No, nobody's really a right-winger in Canada. There may be a few nuts somewhere, I don't know, but you know, when they talk about right-wing in this country, they don't know what it means. However, when I was bashing the BC Teachers Federation, there were a group of very strong lefties who were directing that organization to the detriment of the mass of teachers of BC.
How about the school board administrators whom you lashed away at for feather bedding and overpayments?
I don't suppose they love me, but then the fact is that I don't know whether it's my column or a combination of things, but certainly there have been some results, because now they're cutting back on the administrators and they're cutting back on the expenditures. You know, it's a small start, but it's at least a start. You know, I mean, even the beast of BC has its uses, you know.
Well, of course, SFU, you made friends with Pauline Jewett on a number of occasions, didn't you?
Yes, yes, oh yes.
Over the Bob Harper case?
The Bob Harper case, yes. Now, there was a case of, I think, of discrimination, you know, and persecution of a professor.
I suppose the principal complaint against Collins is not what he does in the way of straightforward reporting, but the fact that he seems to show this right-wing, somewhat racist bias on all occasions.
No, I think Maclean's was right in their article on him when they said he sometimes lapses into good journalism. And I think an example I think is your exposure of excesses at UBC. And I agreed with you on that one. I wish you'd stick to those.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got to...
You regard yourself, I'm going to take phone calls in the next segment, but you regard yourself as a spokesman, as I said at the beginning, for the oppressed, unrepresented, silent, white majority.
I think so. Let me get this straight.
Consider that answer again.
Yeah.
You believe you're the spokesman for the...
Yes, in a way.
What did I say?
The people
silent
who have
majority.
No voice. The people who have no voice.
Who are mostly white.
Yes, but then you see, I would defend. I mean, I've got this label now. There's no getting away from it. okay? I've got this
Well,
label.
let's be quite honest. It's very difficult to speak up for what you might call the WASP culture in this country, or you become a bigot by definition.
That's right. Yes, you see, they're the only people.
Is that right, Bill?
They're the only people who have no spokesman.
If I get on the air and I speak up about stuffing the French language down my throat, which some people believe, or I speak up about an overloading of immigration from other countries in times of unemployment, you would regard me as a white bigot, wouldn't you?
If you talked about unemployment levels, just what the total level should be, no.
If we said stop immigration, there are too many unemployed Canadians, and let them stay in their own countries. Don't let them come here because we want the best of everything for the people now here. Would you call me a bigot?
No, I wouldn't call you a bigot if you said that. I might disagree or agree, but I wouldn't call you a bigot.
The back of my mind was a race thing.
Well, I don't have to find in your columns at the back of your mind. What you say is that immigration's wrong because it comes from certain places, and I say that's discriminatory.
I do say that, and I say it without
reservation.
Without reservation. You see, the thing is this:
you would keep
the Bill Blacks of the world and the Kathleen Ruffs and the Sheila Days seem to. Their cup is full when they know that immigrants are coming in from the third world and all the rest of it in vast numbers. And in fact, this whole human rights industry, that's what it is, you know, it's a new industry, is based on immigration. If it were not for the fact that Trudeau, in the last 10 years, without reference to the Canadian people, has brought in probably 1 million coloured immigrants, you know, these people don't have any objection to that.
There is a serious danger here, though. If you talk like that, and I went on the air and talked like that, 1 million coloured immigrants going to cause race trouble in this country,
no, but it's no
you
point.
could whip up riots in the street.
Well, maybe you could, but I don't think so. The thing is this, that nobody asked for that, and the parliamentarians have not had the guts, except with 1 or 2 exceptions, have not had the guts to address themselves to the problem.
But just a moment, gentlemen. Phone calls to Webster, Collins, and Black. I should say Collins, and then Webster and Black in smaller voice. A couple of minutes. Bill Black wants to respond to Collins on the immigration issue. Bill?
I just want to say that the immigration program you're opposed to is exactly what you were saying we should have earlier, one based on merit, one based on who's going to do the most good for the country rather than where they come from or what the color of their skin is.
I'm afraid you're misinformed on that. The immigration policy of this country is directed toward the third world. I know it, I've gone through the whole thing, and I could give you chapter and verse on it. That is it.
It became that because of the sponsored nominated relative business.
Yep, and because of the creeping after votes on the part of the Liberals.
Enough. Go ahead from Nelson.
Yes, I think paternalism is the highest form of discrimination. I cannot understand why people like Pauline Jewett and Kathleen Ruff do not understand this, and I would like to see Kathleen Ruff and the Human Rights Commission address the problem of closed shop. That is discrimination.
Problem of what?
Closed shop, which I think is discrimination.
Fair enough, we'll leave that line there. Terrace, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Baker. As far as I understand...
Mr. Who? Mr. Who?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Collins.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Collins. As far as I understand it, that you feel that people should be only hired on merit, no giving a care who or what they are?
Yes, I think that people should be hired on merit alone. I have absolutely no objection if 25% of the people at City Hall are recent immigrants from whatever, you know. But
okay, then.
It strictly
Great.
has to be merit.
I'm in total agreement with you
and
because I'm getting a little bit sick and tired of all these new groups that are popping up all over the place and screaming discrimination. And yet, if they turned around and looked at themselves, they would find they are even discriminating against other people themselves.
Well, of course they are. Yeah.
And
who are you talking about?
Well, he's talking about ethnic groups that, you know...
that live within their own culture.
Yeah.
You can't hardly blame them, can you, Billy?
No, I'd say if a member of a minority group's an employer, he has the same obligations as anyone else, and he should hire on the basis of merit.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead. Oh, just a moment, please. Go ahead.
Hello?
That's you.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Collins, I consider you to be one of the finest reporters that we have in the country.
Thank you, sir, for those few kind words.
Enough praise. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Just don't let that Mr. Webster hurt you in any way at all. His bark is a lot worse than his bite. And I'll tell you one thing, you just stay right on and keep on doing what you're doing, and we'll listen, and I'll read the paper, too.
Thank you, sir.
Look at that camera when you answer the phone.
Okay.
And that gives them the impression that you're
I'm-
talking directly to everybody.
Okay.
So don't look down. You've been in television long enough to know that.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate. We have the same name and initial, and now I have an unlisted telephone number, but I can tell you this. Many of the calls that I took, sort of on your behalf, were from either the misinformed or ignorant. And I admire a man who will stand up and be forceful, sensitive.
Too nice. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please. I took that too quickly. My apologies, but it was a bad line.
Okay.
So I chopped him off for that reason. Not because he was being nice to you.
Okay, I'll believe it. Nobody else.
Linda, where do I go next?
Hello?
Hold on, please. Go ahead, please. That's you.
Hello?
That's you. Please turn down your television set and speak up into the telephone, and I shall look at you and we shall answer. Having a little problem there. My fault. It was my fault, callers, not your fault. I took these calls too quickly and people were unsettled. I shall now wait for instructions from my associate producer, Miss Dutka, who's sitting over there. Take number. Go ahead, please.
Yes, hello, sir.
That's right. Speak up.
Yes, sir. Mr. Webster.
Yes.
Yes, I'd just like to say, love your program. It's super, and we should have 1 million people as good as Mr. Collins, as far as I'm concerned. He's got super ideas, and he's just fantastic.
Thank you, sir. I thank you, Mr. Collins thanks you, and Mrs. Collins thanks you.
Thank you very
And
much.
Mr. Collins' dog thanks you.
Mr. Collins has a bulldog.
A boxer.
A boxer.
Yes, a German.
Go ahead. A German dog.
boxer.
Mind you, they say that people who are prisoners become great admirers of their
The
captors.
slaves love their masters.
Is that what happened to you in a way?
No.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. I'll bash you in a minute.
P.O.W.
Yes.
They never did make a movie of that book.
No.
Such a pity. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I am an African immigrant, a black man from Cape Town, and I have lived my first 29 years in South Africa. And I should know a racist when I see one. And Mr. Collins is definitely a racist. And I wish to point out to Mr. Collins that most of the colored immigrants to Canada are the people with better education than what he has. And that they only came to Canada because these very governments in England who has invaded these countries has oppressed these people to a point where they cannot express themselves in a useful and constructive way in their own countries. And as such, I find that most of the colored immigrants are far better educated than the lower class English and the lower class European immigrant. And therefore, if Mr. Collins will be prepared to associate more with them and give them a fair chance in life, they might prove to be what I say they are, far superior in every way than what Mr. Collins is or could ever be.
You've made your point, sir. Now Mr. Collins respond.
Well, there's a snob for you for a start. Talks about education and so on, just like little Lord Whimsy. And furthermore, he considers himself to be superior. Now, isn't that racism? I don't consider myself to be superior.
No, I think what he was saying is he as an individual is superior to you as an individual.
Oh,
and
I
that's
see.
what
Well, I don't consider myself superior to anybody as an individual.
Inferior or superior?
Superior, I don't.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
I'd just like to say this. I think Mr. Collins is one hell of a man, and I think if we had more people like Mr. Collins, that Canada would be great once again. But until then, we'll be in the rotten predicament that we're in. And I just wish that there was a chance of him running for Prime Minister, because he would, I know for a fact that he'd certainly get this country on its legs again.
Believe me, I'd really mess things up.
I agree with that.
I don't agree with that at all.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Collins and Mr. Webster. I don't know where you two gentlemen get all of your ideas from, but I am certainly glad that someone in the Lower Mainland will stick to what they believe and say it to the public.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Quite incredible response. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. We need the Collinses in this country to act as a conscience and make us think a little better, even though it does hurt. On the Human Rights Commission, I'd like to mention that I don't want a 3'5" midget trying to save my 200-pound husband in a case of a fire.
3'5" pregnant midget.
I don't want a pregnant stewardess trying to save me in an emergency of an airplane. And when it comes to South Africa, we have the most incredible holier-than-thou attitude to it, where we have done to the Indians what we are telling South Africa not to do to the blacks out there. And I thank Mr. Collins for bringing these things ahead.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, the telephone line trouble has just suddenly cleared up. I hope it stays cleared up because I plan to keep the both of you a little longer. But you know, this is where the ordinary reasonable person like myself, unlike Collins, the reasonable person gets really annoyed when I am told that a pregnant stewardess can work up until she feels not well enough to work. I mean, that's a piece of nonsense.
No, it's...
The moment a woman becomes pregnant in 4 months, I don't want her messing around to save me if the plane crash lands. I want totally healthy people.
Well, that's the crazy thing that this
I mean, this is what I joined Collins.
No, but it seems to me that what people are asking for in these things is a judgment about when does that woman become not able to do her job, or when...
Well, she's certainly not when she's 6 months pregnant. I don't want her on the plane.
Well, I mean, I trust the experts on that, but the question is, should the experts decide that, or should somebody decide that a woman shouldn't be up there because she's pregnant and she isn't...
I'll tell you who should decide it. Somebody pays the woman's wages. And if somebody thinks he's not getting value because of pregnancy, then somebody has the right to say, come back when it's all over, dear.
Right, Webster, taking a break now to line up the telephone calls again, and back in 2 minutes. Because if the phones go good, I'll go over time. If they don't, I won't. Hey? Are you there?
Hello.
Oh, good, it's clear. Hold on, love. You're the next call. Where are you speaking from?
Hello?
Hold on, please. I'll use you in a minute. Are you there? I'm getting a new bounce on the bloody thing when I push the button. Are you there?
Yes?
Hold on, ma'am. Where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking from Duncan.
Hold on, love. Maybe it's me that's bouncing it. No, you hear that bounce? Mike, you hear the bounce? Hold on, please. Are you there? Are you there?
Hello?
Hold on, love. Don't go away.
Okay.
I think we've got the phones in order now, but there's something which is a variable here.
We're going to continue.
Hold on. We're going to continue with phones.
Okay. Henry? Hello?
Is there any more of this poison around?
Any more coffee, please, Suzanne?
Doesn't matter if there isn't.
Very poor service this morning.
Oh, no, it's not. It's very good.
Do you know who this...
recognize a friend when you see
We're on in a second, love. Move out the camera shot. Don't be so stupid. Well, I'm going to go to the phones. I think we've cleared up the trouble, and I want people to get a chance to speak to Bill Black as well as to Collins, but you must be... Your head must be up to this size with all the favourable responses.
No, I take very little notice. I mean, I'm pleased when people like me, but I don't let it affect me, believe me. You know, I'm too old for that.
Your modesty does not become you. Go ahead from Terrace, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Webster, I'd like to comment on the fact that I take the Vancouver Sun in spite of Mr. Collins. And I would like to take exception to one article that he wrote not too long ago about the BC directories and widows being...
Oh, yes. Yeah, you give a little capsule of the article first. You objected to Kathleen Ruff interfering with BC directories because they didn't want the use of the term... She didn't want the use of the term widow.
That's right. And the point was that she has absolutely no right under the Human Rights Act to suggest that the word widow should not be used.
Well, Mr. Webster, I would just like to say that I happened to be at a human rights conference in Terrace. It was open to the public, and I chaired the particular meeting. And a widow got up, and she was in tears about the harassment that she experienced as a result of being listed in the BC directories as a widow. She had gone to a lawyer. She had tried to get a court injunction to prevent them from using that term widow after her name, and she was unsuccessful. And I think that although Mr. Collins might be very sanctimonious worrying about BC directories, I think that he should be thinking about the welfare of the people that are actually involved and the trauma that they experience as a result of being listed as a widow in a directory that's available all over the province of British Columbia.
Well, I take the lady's point, and it may be that some people do object to being listed as widows. In the first place, they have no obligation to be listed at all. When the BC directories come around, you can tell them to go away, you don't want your name in the directory.
You
That's
get
point
the
number one.
information from the next door neighbor.
Well,
No, what you do, I'm not in the BC directory for the simple reason I informed them in writing that I did not want to be listed in the BC directory and they must follow my wishes.
Right.
You must put it in writing.
And
on the other hand, Bill, though, I think that the only thing that really annoyed Collins about the widow business was that it was Ruff that raised it.
No.
If you had raised it as an issue in your paper and commanded the BC directories not to do it and you'd have won the battle, you'd have been sanctimonious about it.
No. The thing is that I object to all these new police forces and
snoops.
You know, yeah, right. And you know, we have new bureaucracies poking their nose into everything. A widow who is with it need not be listed in the directory at all. Schluss, as they say in Germany.
There you go again.
Unfortunately, everybody isn't a Collins in this world, and I would just like to say thank God for Kathleen Ruff and thanks Bill Black for doing a very, very unpopular and very thankless job with people like Collins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just refer to the Human Rights Code here for a minute, because you said Kathleen has no right to do that. It's true that the widow thing did not come within a formal complaint under the code.
That's right.
But Section 11 of the Human Rights Code requires the development and conducting of educational programs designed to eliminate discriminatory practices and encouraging and coordinating programs and activities promoting human rights and fundamental freedoms. In other words, the whole idea here is that there will be activities eliminating discriminatory attitudes as well as acts of discrimination, and it seems
Well,
to me
that's
that's
a
her
wide open
job.
thing. But the point is that she had no right. I'll tell you what happened there. The BC directories were actually harassed by these new policemen. They came into the office giving them orders and telling them how to run their business. You know, and they had to get their lawyers to get these people the hell out of there.
Now, what happened here is there was contact, there were negotiations over 2 years, it was not somebody barging into an office, and it seems to me if you have a complaint about what was done there, your complaint's with the legislature, and the legislature that passed this bill, both
come on,
parties.
don't give me that, Bill. You know damn well that the people who have the responsibility for conducting the policy are the bureaucrats. You know, they share the responsibility with the politicians who half the time don't know what's going on anyway. And this was introduced by the NDP, which of course seeks to remove all evil from the world.
Have we not got a new kind of right-wing human rights commission which isn't quite so lefty as the old one?
I understand so. I haven't met any of them yet. I'm not willing to believe what I read in the papers.
Especially in your own column. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to say that I have admired Mr. Collins as far back as the Suez Crisis, you know, in the mid-50s, when there was a wave of sentiment for England. Nobody was allowed to say that they were wrong in doing what they did, and he stood alone in this whole country.
I'll tell you what, madam, against Webster here. We had a debate on the television, and I won.
Who said you won the debate? As a matter of fact, right now, had the British been allowed to go into Suez, we could have held back the whole Saudi Arabian business for 20 quiet years.
The last Pakistan.
No.
The last remnant of empire.
At that time.
Oh.
But you didn't win any debate. I remember one occasion when I called you and had you blushing when I described you accurately as you were in those days, a corporation lapdog. Very funny.
God bless you, Webster. You're as good as ever.
Go ahead from Duncan.
Oh, thank you. Bravo, Doug Collins. Keep up the good work. I've admired you for, well, as long as
English accent.
I can remember, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. That's good enough. That's all he wants to hear from you. Just praise. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
I think Bill is extremely naive, and as far as Doug goes, carry on the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
We should tell me why.
Yeah. Where shall I go? Go ahead,
To hell.
please. Go ahead. This is a family program in the morning. We'll have none of your rude language. Go ahead, please. That's you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
That's me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm not going to have rude language either. Doug, I'd like to address a comment to you. I'm a British journalist who has been stationed in South Africa for the past 30 years. I've been over in Canada now for a couple of years, but firstly, I would like to congratulate you very heartily on your column. If anything touches on the freedom of the press, this is it. I really would like to congratulate you.
Thank you very much.
Secondly,
nice to hear that from a colleague.
I'm not going to comment on local issues because I'm not qualified, but I would like to go back to your article following the lunch you had with Mr. Fenter. The whole question, and I was glad to hear a South African also on the program a little earlier, the whole question in South Africa, strangely enough, is not a racial one. It is one of wealth. It is one of wealth which the 5 foreign ministers who are meeting on the question of Southwest Africa at the moment cannot see clearly. Under the guise of extracting from the territory
I'm losing him.
of Southern Africa the wealth of diamonds, gold, chromium, manganese, you name it.
To come to the point, sir, I don't quite... There is a race problem in South Africa. Don't
Sir,
try and kid us.
what
There's
makes you
also a
think
problem of South Africans' resources.
South
What's the
African?
point you're trying to make?
The point I'm trying to make is that the racial problem is being created by the Russians and the Cubans in order to extract the wealth of South Africa to the detriment of the Western world.
Hold it. You have written some stuff about how smug and stupid the Canadians are who object to barn burnings by the RCMP when at the same time all kind of subversives are operating in this country to deny it under the leadership of this intellectual French-Canadian Prime Minister, who arrogant, you've called him, elitist and all the rest of it. Do you subscribe to that view about South Africa?
No, I think there is a race problem in South Africa, and I think that there inevitably has to be a race problem in a country which has so many diverse tribes, races, call them what you want, and which moreover has a white segment at the top which has been there a long time and which has attracted most of
No,
these
but
races.
is it going to turn into a fight between East and West over Africa's South Africa's resources?
I think this gentleman there, probably what he was getting at, was that there is a confrontation now in Africa between South Africa and the Russian bloc.
Thank you. I'm going to run over a little bit this morning, and Bill Black will have a turn in a moment.
Open his mic, talk, Jack.
Henry, I think I'll do a famous Webster poll and see how many calls we can handle, how quickly.
Right.
And I want the question. The question will be, would you fire Collins from the Sun?
Okay, that's a good one.
I won't do it in the cancel subscriptions business because that's not good. Would you?
Well, do what you like.
No, I wouldn't do the cancel subscriptions.
How long do you figure you're going to do it before you go?
10 minutes.
You do about 10 minutes, and then you go to break, and then we come back for a wrap-up goodbyes.
That's it.
Okay. Okay, 10 minutes on this.
Linda, it's Squamish confirmed. Can't do the Squamish promo.
1 minute, coming back. Approximately 10 minutes. Right, Mr. Collins, okay. There we go, sir.
Where are the 2 long-distance calls from, Linda? Have I spoken to you yet?
No, you haven't, sir.
Keep it short. I'll use you first. Are you in Kamloops? Hello, Kamloops. Linda, nobody there. Kamloops ain't there.
How can you go over time? Don't they have a...
We've got a yoga thing. I'm going to 90 minutes in January, so I can go over time. Are you speaking from Kamloops, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Sir, I do apologize. You're first. Where are you speaking from?
Hot coffee, careful.
Can't hear me. Duncan, are you there, Duncan?
Oh, yes.
Well, for God's when I say go ahead, Duncan, you speak up. Don't go away. Hold on, please. This telephone technique that we're using partly on this program, we've got to work into it and make sure that it works properly. That's why I asked you to look at the camera when you're answering a phone call, you know, so that people get the impression you're speaking at them. What I'm going to do after take a couple of long-distance calls, though, I'm going to do an old-fashioned Webster poll. And the question I'm going to ask people after the first 2 calls is, should Collins be fired from the Sun? It means nothing.